this is the card that we're going to make tonight. It is using the Geared Up Garage stamp set, which is in the annual catalog, which this stamp set has a coordinating set of Thinlits dies, so called the Garage Gears. And I just love this stamp set because it's great for any gearheads that you have in your life. And I have a few in mind, that's for sure. And since Valentine's Day is coming up on Sunday, that kind of motivated me thinking of the special gearheads in my life. So we've got the outside of the card, and then we also did some special things on the inside, and that says, "You jumpstart my heart." So, little special Valentines. This one is the actual card we're going to demonstrate for the most part. I always am tweaking my cards, but this one we colored the images using the Stampin' Write markers. This one we did using the colored pencils. So the colored pencils, we liked the Cherry Cobbler red colored pencil better than the Real Red. This is using the Stampin' Write markers in Real Red, so you can kind of see markers compared to colored pencils and the blender pens. And then this one, which I'll demonstrate, I also used an embossing folder with brick. You can't really see it, but it's there on the gray, trying to give it just a little bit of texture. So those are the cards we're going to make, and I want to go ahead and get started because there's a lot of fun stuff we're going to do. So first up, just to go through the supplies, we've got a Real Red card base. It's cut at 5.5 by 8.5, and then it's folded and scored at 4.25. So that's the red. We're also going to need some Real Red scraps to use for the die cut images inside. Then I used Cajun Craze, so these are 3 strips of Cajun Craze that are 1 inch by 4 inches. So next up I've got basic white, so you're going to need scrap pieces to stamp and die cut our images on the front. I've got a piece that is 4 by 5.25 basic white that I'm going to be using for the inside of the card. And then we've also got a basic white stamp that we're going to be stamping on for the front. That's 3 inches by 5 inches. And I will go over these measurements again, but they will also get posted to my blog and YouTube channel. And then we've got a Smoky Slate 4 by 5.25, which is going to be our first layer on the card. But before we start putting our card together, I'm going to show you some things on the Stamparatus and how I actually used, how you can use the Stamparatus to do some neat things. So I have already set the 3 images that we're using on the front of the card on one of my clear plates on the Stamparatus. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a neat trick on how to perfectly line up your images and stamp them after you've die cut them. So it's, if you're having to die cut, you want to make several cards using die cuts or that kind of thing, this is kind of a reverse method. but it's really a neat way. So you're going to take a piece of scrap paper, and this is just that, pieces of scrap paper I keep in my drawer. And we're going to place this in the Stamparatus, and I want to line it up and put my magnets on to hold it in place, but I want to line it up so I can bring it back to here. So the Stamparatus has measurements, and I am lining it up with my 1-inch mark here and the edge of the machine, or edge of the Stamparatus, on that side. So next thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to move this down so you guys can see, I'm just going to ink up my images with my StazOn ink, and I'm using StazOn just because I'm going to be coloring it in. So I've inked up my images. I'm going to get this back in the camera, and then I am just going to stamp them down, make sure I push down hard, and bring them back up, and there are my 3 images. So now we're going to remove the magnets, and these magnets are really powerful. So you want to be careful. If you ever get them stuck together, it takes quite a bit of muscle to get them apart. So now that I've got my images stamped, I'm going to put this to the side and bring my big shot up here. And I've got my scrap paper. Now I am doing this on my multi-purpose platform that is not magnetized at all, and I'm going to show you the trick on how to keep your die cuts in the right spot when you don't have the magnets to help. So first thing I'm going to do is just line them up, and you can see it's a little bit tedious here to line them up, but it's easy and doable. Okay, and you do want to be precise when you're doing this. So now I'm going to grab sticky notes, and I'm just going to use my sticky notes to hold my dies in place so that they won't move on me. Once I sandwich, okay, there we go. Once I put my sandwich together and run it through the Big Shot. And this is the old Big Shot. Don't go looking in Stampin' Up's catalogs or online for this. They have redesigned it. It's now the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. And someday I will own that wonderful machine. It folds up, stores nice and neat, but this one still works, and I just can't see putting this away when it still works. But so we're going to crank through that and bring this back over. Okay, so now I'm going to take off my Post-it notes and we'll see. I've got 3 images that have been punched out nearly perfectly. So those will go in a pile. Now, we're going to take that piece of paper and I will show you what we're going to do with that in a minute. But while we've got the Big Shot machine up here, I am going to grab my scrap of white and I am going to punch out my car, those three things. And I'm not even going to worry if they move. So that's how quick and easy it is to die cut something when you're not worried about lining it up with a stamped image. So I'm going to set these aside. So this is what I'm out of film. I'm sorry, guys. So I now have 3 die cut images of my toolbox, my car, and my gas can. And I am going to set those aside to be used later. And I'm going to, one more time, take real red scrap and I'm going to punch, or cut, not punch. I'm going to cut these images out. And again, don't need to worry if they wiggle a little, they're all on the paper. So one more time through the Big Shot. Okay. Grabbing my Take a Pick tool, and don't need that piece, but I'm going to use my Take a Pick tool. There's little holes in this, and I'm just going to gently pop those until the piece comes out. And that's for the inside of our card, so we're going to save that for later as well. And then same thing here to get the gear out. Little holes and one little poke and out it comes. Set aside for later. I'm gently poking with the Take a Pick tool till it wants to release from the die. Poke out and get rid of those little pieces. And there's another set of gears. And all of these dies came in the shoot, I forgot the name of the set. Hang on. These all came in the Garage Gears Thinlits die. So you got a total of 14 dies in this one. So you've got lots of different options, and I'm just showing you, I mean, a handful of those. So there's my other gear, and that is that. So get rid of that scrap. And while I've got the Big Shot out, we're going to do one more thing. I'm going to get this ready for my embossing folder. So I got to flip my platform, get rid of one sheet. I am going to use, this is the old brick wall, which is retired. They have a brick and mortar 3D embossing folder, which would give you an even better look than this. But I'm just going to, just to give this gray a little bit of texture. And I mean, what doesn't go with cars? I mean, a brick wall and cars, it just gives that vibe. So we're just gonna put our paper in our embossing folder, and I lined my paper right up with the bricks because this is a straight pattern. So I lined it right up with the edge of the bricks there. It's straight across at the top so that my bricks will be straight and it won't look like my brick wall is collapsing and crooked. In my other life, my husband and I do handyman construction remodeling stuff, so you would notice a crooked brick wall. So that's gone through the Big Shot or the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. Just open it up and you can see the brick wall pattern in that paper. So I'm going to get rid of the beast and go back to the Stamparatus and show you how we're going to stamp our die cut images. So I am going to line up my scrap piece of paper just like I had it when I stamped it the first time. So I'm lining it up right along the top and right along the edge of that 1 inch line. And I am putting my magnets on. Now, here are my stamped images, or my cut images that I want to stamp. And they fit right in these little holes that we cut out using the dies. So there they sit, right in there like that. And that took me a fraction of the time that it took me to line it up. So this is where, if you're making one card, not necessarily time saving, but if you're going to be making 2 or 3 even, it's kind of worth the extra effort. So I'm going to ink up my stamps. And now I'm just going to fold them down and press. And there are my stamped images. So those of us that have been around longer than the Stamparatus, when I die cut images that I wasn't going to, that I was going to stamp before I stamped them, I'm sure people were like, oh my goodness, that is so wrong. It took me a moment, and I had to see this for myself, to not, I was like a cardinal rule, you always stamped your die cut stuff. So you can remove these plates just in and out right at this right angle mark with the board. So I'm just going to get rid of that plate so that I'm not inking myself, and we're done with this piece. So now I am going to turn my Stamparatus so that it's now with this side plate up, and I'm grabbing the basic white piece that is 3 inches by 5 inches, and I have already put on here this little grease spot, oil spill spot on the Stamparatus, and then I will show you how I'm going to stamp the grease spots on the front of the card. So there's 1, 2, 3, and I wanted them, you know, all lined up equal distance apart, and I could have done this by sight, but they wouldn't necessarily be exactly in line. So I'm going to show you how we did this. So I took my card, and the first thing I'm doing is I'm lining it up at the 1/2 inch line at the top, and then my first measurement, I'll bring this up so you can see. So I've got 1/2 inch on this side. The lights. So there's my 1/2 inch mark right there is this set of lines, and then down here at the bottom I am going to go to 1 3/4 inches, which is this line right here. So I'm going to line my paper up right with that. Plop down our handy dandy magnets, and now I'm going to take my Smoky Slate stamp pad and ink that stamp up and bring it down and give me a good solid stamp right there. And there's my first oil spot. It's light, but you can see it. But that's just, I just want that hint of an oil spot. Now, don't let your magnets touch. Next measurement I'm going to move over to is 3 1/4 inches. So 3 1/4 is right here. So it's one line past the dark line. And I'll make sure I've got it nice and straight across the top at that 1/2 inch mark. And again, put my magnets down, making sure I'm out of the way of the stamps, and ink it up one more time, and down we go. So you can start to see how perfectly in line those images are. So you can just keep stamping. So final measurement is 4 3/4. So that's one line to the right of the dark line, and this one, no, ink it up one more time, and there we go. Press it down. And there is our 3 ink spots right where I wanted them. So there's that layer to the card.
No.
So closing up the stamp pad. One more thing I'm going to do with the Stamparatus is stamp the greeting on the inside. I'm just going to line it up in the corner, secure it with the magnets, and there's my little You Jumpstart My Heart stamp. I'm going to ink it up. Now, I'm going to take a scrap piece of paper, and I'm going to quick stamp it off on that, and then I'm going to stamp my image right there, and You Jumpstart My Heart. And I just stamped it off because, especially with words, I just think it's a little bit crisper if you just gently stamp off the excess when you're using the StazOn. And my StazOn is pretty new, so it's a little bit on the juicy side. So I get extra clarity with that. So we're done with the Stamparatus. So we're going to color in my images, and the gas can, we decided we wanted this little stripe to be in Cajun Craze. And
looking for the palm. Oh, it's tucking back.
Okay. Then we did the little latch at the top and the latch here. I'm just adding Cajun Craze there. And then the Cajun Craze we put in the headlights. We just wanted to have our two colors on all of our stamped images. So that's the Cajun Craze Stampin' Write marker, and I used the felt tip end rather than the fine tip ballpoint end. And again, if you have colored pencils, you can use the colored pencils. If you have the Stampin' Blends markers, you know, and it can be whatever colors you want. I'm coloring everything in. That's why I like stamping, is I can be artistic without having any ability. Okay, so those are colored. We're done with our Stampin' Write markers. So now we're gonna build our card. So we've got our Real Red card base, and I'm gonna build from the inside out tonight. So the first thing I'm gonna do, and one of my team members asked me, and she's like, I don't always get it in the right spot. And I'm a big stamp and seal person, and I've been doing this enough that I'm usually pretty good about getting things in the right spot. But if you want a more forgiving adhesive, this liquid glue, the multi-purpose liquid glue, is great. And it's got a flat tip on one end, and I'm just gonna kind of smear around just like I did with the stamp and seal. I'm going to get it close to the edge, and then, you know, kind of mess some around in the middle. You don't want too much. You don't want it squirting out of the sides and that kind of thing. And then I'm going to put it on here with about 1/8 of an inch. And if it's not quite right, you can lift it up, you can move it, shift it just a little bit, so I can lift it, shift it until it's in that spot. And I've got ink on my fingers. But there's that. And then remember the die cuts that we did earlier? I'm going to bring those back out and switch to the other end of my glue. And now I've got a fine tip. And the first thing I'm going to do is put a little bit on this little guy, and just a few dots around the edge. I'll grab a pair of tweezers, and then I'm gonna center him over my You Jump Start My Heart and put that down. Now this glue, because it is forgivable, you may need to hold it in place for just a second. Make sure you get it all pressed down. And there we go. And now just going to do a few little dots around my gears here. And then grab my tweezers. And I'm just going to put this in this corner down here. And these do have, I mean, they have a top and a bottom. I won't say right and wrong side, because maybe the side that I think is the top side is your bottom side. But they do have look different from the top or the bottom, so you'll have to pick which side you like best. And just a few dots. It does not take much because this glue does spread out and it holds once you get it on there. So that's the inside of the card. Now we're going to build the layers on the front side. Are we still broadcasting? Okay. My screen is dark, so I can't see what's going on, but everybody tells me that you guys, it's still going, so I'm going to keep going. So again, I'm going back to my wide angle tip, and I'm going to get it going. Once you get it flowing, it goes real smooth. And I'm just going to put glue around the edges on all four sides. And then put some in the middle. And now down we go. And there's that brick wall pattern, which maybe it's just mental. I like having something under there. But like I said, the 3D brick and mortar 3D embossing folder, that one is a smaller brick pattern, so it would show up more under things. So just a option. Okay, now I'm grabbing my Designer Series paper, and you could measure this out and lay them out at a spacing that you like. What I'm going to do is kind of use my brick line, and I'm going to put one at the top, and this paper is 1 inch wide by 4 inches. So I'm going to put one at the top, and then I'm going to do my bottom layer. And I'm going to space it up from the bottom about that 1/2 inch measurement. And hope I get it on there straight. And then I'm going to place the center one and kind of put it halfway in between the other two. So that's why I did the bottom two first, was I could space them about 1/2 inch down on the gray. And now here, again, it's about 1/2 inch in between top and bottom. So there's that. Now I'm going to do this piece. And this is that basic white piece that we stamped our oil spots on. And this is cut, it's cut 1/4 inch smaller than the gray label, or the gray layer on top and bottom. So now we're just going to put adhesive on our stamped images and we'll be done. But I'm using Stampin' Dimensionals to pop these images. And I like the car. I think it's the centerpiece, so that's why I put it in the center. So that, and I'm just centering it in kind of the center of that strip. And you can see the little oil spill just a little bit behind it. It's just those little added things that kind of take your card from okay to wow. Or at least I think they do. I mean, maybe you guys hate the oil spills. Lainey and I liked them earlier today when we were putting the card together. Because we hemmed and hawed. Do we want to do it? Do we not? So, there's the toolbox. And then the oil can. And there you go. There's the card that I made tonight. Here's the card that I made earlier today. And then here's the one using the cherry cobbler and the colored pencils. So you can see the difference. And I mean, no card is going to come out exact the same. That's the card using the Stamparatus. Hope you enjoyed seeing the ways that you can use the Stamparatus